Hi everyone, my name is Primrose and I'm currently a master's candidate at the National University of Singapore. So before I start my paper, I would like to first take the opportunity to thank the organizers of this conference and also the organizer of my panel, Dr. Scott Hess, for the wonderful opportunity to share my research on this platform. My paper investigates the resignification of the posthuman subject with the critical vector of race in Hanif Kureishi's The Body. So published in 2002, The Body is a speculative fiction that explores the fantasy of body swapping or transplanting consciousness in another body for the pursuit of youth and immortality. It chronicles the plight of a famous white writer named Adam who lives in London and is facing the inevitable deterioration of his aging body. He then finds out about this opportunity to migrate to or inhabit a new body through an operation that will transplant his brain and his consciousness into a body of his own choosing, at a party where he met a man named Ralph, who proclaims that he has undergone the procedure himself and has become what is called a new body. Adam then decides to have the operation in an underground clinic and trades his old body for a young one, which previously belonged to a man named Mark, who was presumed to have committed suicide. Thereafter, Adam assumes a new identity called Leo and begins a new life, backpacking across Europe and living a life of hedonism and recklessness, but also one in which he's perpetually subjected to sexualization and exploitation. Eventually, tired of such a life and missing his wife in London, he yearns to go back to his old body and life, but to his horror, a return is impossible, and he finds himself trapped in his perpetually liminal state. With the idea of the post-human body modified by advanced biomedical technologies and the constitutive fantasy of achieving immortality and eternal youth is a crucial and obvious theme that runs through the story, I suggest that an interrogation of the discourse of posthumanism in the novel would be incomplete without accounting for the profound racial ambiguities that the text maintains around the identity of Mark. The body that Adam chooses is described to be neither white nor dark, but lightly toasted. And speculations about the racial appearance of the body permeate the novel. Adam remarks that he will, at last, have the body of an Italian footballer, and in another instance, the novel refers to racialized elements, as encapsulated in the line, "We enjoy them looking at us," those, that is, who didn't regard us dark-skinners with fear and contempt. The racial ambiguities mark Adam/Leo as a transnational underclass, subjecting him to both sexual and labor exploitation, as he is objectified for his physicality and sexuality. As such, the novel juxtaposes the speculative possibility of body swapping and the material reality and experience of racism through the material re-embodiment of a racialized post-human body, from which a certain tension emerges. This tension, I posit, registers a contradictory impulse in posthumanism to pivot upon a historical break, coterminous as it is with the post-colonial and the post-industrial, while its methodological positioning often occludes a historicizing approach. In order to investigate how the body expands the premise of posthumanism through the possible accounting of race and its historical contingencies, I employ Rosie Braidotti's critical posthumanism, Derridian theorizations of hospitality, particularly the way the site of hospitality is one of profound ambivalence, and Fanon's notion of bodily schemas as the object of racial categorization, in order to investigate how the body expands the premise of posthumanism through the accounting of race and its historical contingencies. I shall begin by explaining the import of Braidotti's critical posthumanism as an important framework through which the posthuman subject in the body is refracted. Rooted in an anti-humanist tradition, Braidotti posits a posthuman subjectivity that is post-anthropocentric, guided by zoe-centric ethics that accounts for all forms of life and the relationality and connection between all living beings, thereby displacing the centrality of the human. Braidotti's posthuman theory of subjectivity is premised upon Spinoza's monistic worldview, in which matter, the world, and humans are not dualistic entities structured according to principles of internal or external opposition, and which, therefore, does not rely on classical humanism and carefully avoids anthropocentrism. More importantly, Braidotti urges the necessity for posthumanism that includes both scientific and technological complexity, and its implications for political subjectivity, political economy, and forms of governance, especially in the emergence of a perverse form of posthumanism, in which all life forms are enslaved to the exploitative logic of advanced capitalism. Aligned with Braidotti's conceptualization of a contemporary posthuman subjectivity, which is inflected by an understanding of new advances in contemporary biosciences, neural and cognitive sciences, and by the informatics, Kureishi's novella The Body features a posthuman subject as one that is profoundly modified by biomedical advancements, and therefore straddles the realm of the organic and the inorganic, the human and the non-human. More provocatively, the post-human subjectivity that is embodied by Adam after he inhabits Mark's body is elaborated through the semiotics of race and class, as evidenced by the subsequent sense of entrapment, as he discovers in his new body, as he discovers Mark's body to function as a commodity and is inserted into the equation of exchanges as a body of low value in the political economy. This is further evidenced in the way Adam continues to play out the overdetermined fate of Mark's body, who has been forced into prostitution and sexual exploitation at one point. Adam is thus coerced to participate in an orgy, sexually exploited by Patricia, the owner of a spiritual center in Greece where he worked as a handyman, and even has to act as a gigolo at one point, reduced as he is to a neoliberal underclass, and hence evoking the phenomenon of cheap migrant labor that is facilitated by transnational flows and migratory movements. Accordingly, I suggest that the body is an allegory of global exploitation of the neoliberal or transnational underclass and the attendant social and psychological diasporic experience. And it is through this allegorical structure and intent that the novel offers the possibility of conceptualizing a post-human subjectivity and consciousness that is inflected with the politics of race and class in a globalist conjuncture defined by the conditions of diaspora. Following this, I beg the question, how can we make sense of the body's elaboration of a racialized subjectivity through the post-human subject? Reading the body through the Derridian notion of hospitality as a powerful site of ambivalence, in which the reductive binary between host and guest is confounded, and Fanon's phenomenological account of a racialized subjectivity in his seminal work Black Skin, White Mask, expands the premise of Braidotti's critical posthumanism by accounting for a racialized subjectivity constituted by the global conditions of diaspora, and its attendant complications in questions of race and national identity. In so doing, it configures the possibility of a post-human subjectivity that is divested of its Western epistemological focus by dismantling the unity of the white subject, who is embodied by Adam's old identity as a cosmopolitan white elite who possesses the social-cultural capital to purchase the body that belongs to that of a neoliberal underclass. I shall now elaborate on the diasporic experience and consciousness, particularly of the neoliberal underclass, through the theorization of hospitality as a site of ambivalence, upon which the post-human subjectivity in the body is premised. As Derrida posits, the granting of hospitality to the figure of the foreigner, represented and protected by his or her family name, is at once what makes hospitality possible, or the hospitable relationship to the foreigner possible, but by the same token, what limits and prohibits it. The paradox of hospitality, then, is that the threshold of admissibility, encoding closure and finitude, is immanent to it, and is premised upon violence. As the subjectivity of the body is elaborated through the discourse of the uninvited guest, and the collapsed boundaries between the host/guest, The side of hospitality is permeated with ambivalence. As Adam's subjective consciousness is dislocated to Mark's body through a technological premise, which contests the sovereign notion of the self and identity that is integral to the humanism of the Enlightenment, the reconfigured identity of Adam as Leo highlights the resultant violence and the irreconcilable split within the self of Adam/Leo's body, of a singular side of subjectivity that has been split into multiple ones. This split corresponds to the drama of ontological negation in Fanon's notion of the corporeal body as a site of violent contact between the two bodily schemas that are constitutive of the corporeal schema that has been negated and replaced by the racial epidermal schema. The experience of the black man in the face of being labeled "look a Negro" by a white child embodies an instance whereby the racial epidermal schema, the imposition of grids of subjectivity upon the body, disrupts the corporeal schema of the black man. This violent brutality in the act that finds its correlative in an amputation, an excision, a hemorrhage that splattered his whole body with black blood, emblematic of the systematic form of ontological negation that is enacted by the white gaze. Aligned to Fanon's exposition of the traumatic clash of the bodily schemas, Adam/Leo's reconfigured self, like the black man, undergoes a violent effacement of the self. As he puts it, I become aware that I was without my body. It might be better to say I was suspended between bodies, out of mind and not yet properly in another. As such, even the desire to burrow inside and live in the bodies of others is actualized. For Adam, the inevitable subjective consciousness, constitutive of personal memories, history, and personality, is irreconcilable with the external imposition of subjectivity upon a body that is completely foreign to the self. Alike the clash of the bodily schemas the black man experiences. So though the clash of the bodily schemas that threatens the self-possessed identity of the guest takes place on the side of hospitality, it is nevertheless a productive side of negotiation that underscores the ambivalent positions of the host and the guest. The host figure that is signified by Mark's body, which provides refuge to Adam, also finds its uncanny double in the spectral figure of the ghost, who in its abjection possesses a kind of unassailable power. As the identity of Mark is tied up inextricably with its physical form of the body, Adam, in occupying that space, is thus subjected to being haunted by Mark's past, an effective manifestation of his memories and history. He puts it in this way: it's as if I have a ghost or shadow soul inside me. I can feel things, perhaps memories of the man who was here first. Perhaps the physical body has a soul. Here, the logical order of the guest being the one who enters the home of the guest is confounded, since the ghost of Mark seems to be the one who inhabits Adam/Leo. As the host-guest relation is one that is resigned in its tentativeness and conflictual motivations, the split of the singular side of subjectivity, from either the perspective of the host or guest, to multiple and overlapping sides of subjectivity, serves to reveal the way in which race as a radical authority is experienced within the self. This configuration of a posthuman subjectivity that takes into account a racialized and diasporic subjectivity in the body is therefore aligned with Braidotti's idea of a posthuman subjectivity and ethics that is premised beyond the self to include other forms of subjectivity. With the privileging of the transnational imaginary, the phenomenon with the phenomenon of deterritorialization that renders boundaries porous due to cultural hybridization and migratory movements, the erosion of geographical boundaries and the attendant transience of political affiliations share a resonating parallelism with the convenient transplantation of the brain or consciousness to a foreign body in Kureishi's The Body, and the commonality of the ease in being admitted to this new space. For Adam, his new body that endows him with youth is at the price of a considerable amount, money that would otherwise have gone to his children. highlighting the way in which the global elite exploits the abject body of the dispossessed or the transnational underclass through a ready mobilization of capital. Indeed, as the right to inhabit Mark's body is granted by Adam by capitalist privilege, the silence of Mark, both literal and metaphorical, accentuates the double exploitation enacted upon his body. The confounded categories of the host and the guest, and the ambivalent side of hospitality in the novel, articulates a diasporic consciousness that is unique to our globalist conjuncture, constituted as it is by the antinomic categories of the local and the global, the national and the transnational. The racial ambiguity that the text maintains around Mark's identity, which nevertheless marks him as the transnational underclass, underscores the way the semiotics of race and national identity follow the multidimensional logic of the neoliberal globalist order. The allegorical structure in a speculative fiction thus gestures us towards a possibility of conceptualizing a post-human subjectivity and consciousness that is inflected with the politics of race and class, and in so doing, extends the premise of a racialized subjectivity that is exemplified by the phenomenological account of blackness in Fanon's Black Skin White Mask, in the enlarged context of diaspora, while also showing how a post-human subjectivity can take into account race and its historical contingencies. As Braidotti puts it, science and technology studies tend to dismiss the implications of their positions for a revised vision of the subject. Subjectivity is out of the picture, and with it, a sustained political analysis of the post-human condition. In the light of this, the racialized post-human body and subjectivity in Kureishi's novel departs from that of a European or Eurocentric universal, rational subjectivity. I apologize that my paper still lacks some coherence and conclusive claims, as it is still a work in progress, but thank you so much for listening to my presentation.